What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Bleav in Kentucky. My name is Vinny Hardy, my main man, Cole Park from the Cat's Paws, coming to y'all live on YouTube and Facebook. At Bleav in Kentucky. You haven't liked and subscribed and rated and given 5 stars and all that good stuff, please go ahead and do so. And we appreciate everybody that watches and listens each and every time we do an episode. CP, man, we just coming off this bye week, and the Cats are heading to Columbia and face a team that kind of exposed us last year, and we'll see if we can make some improvements going up against Carolina this time around.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think Mark Stoops even talked about that on Monday. He said a lot of good games in that rivalry, which has really become a rivalry lately with Shane Beamer and Mark Stoops. But yeah, last year was one that stood out quite a bit. Kentucky had a lot of hype coming into the season. Didn't really get to see a ton out of them. Not necessarily national hype, but local hype coming into last season. One of the most talented rosters on paper. Coming into the season with that weird weather delay game against Southern Miss, don't really know what they are. Game day comes down, not big game day, but SEC game day, to South Carolina, Kentucky in Lexington. Got to be on stage with Paul Feinbaum, and then what happens? Kentucky just gets punched in the mouth immediately, 31-6, embarrassed in Kroger Field. And that would really, after that, there was a couple good games in a row. But that really kind of set the tone for what would end up being a 4-8 season, really set the tone for where Kentucky's issues were and exposed that offensive line. So this is one that, every game's important. You have to win every game in the SEC that you can, but you really got to win this one if you want to prove that last year was the fluke and not the new norm going forward. Obviously fans were frustrated with that loss to Ole Miss in week 2. Felt like Kentucky should have won that game, could have won that game, but this game gives yourself a chance to prove like, hey, we are a better team like we say we are. That's obviously what Mark Stoops has been saying, that Kentucky is a better team. So this is one that needs to be very, very important for Kentucky.
Absolutely. As Bush Hampton likes to say a lot, it's critical. That's one of his favorite words. And yes, from the South Carolina side of things, is probably critical for them as well. And we're going to get into a little Gamecock perspectives, because we got a guest on this episode. He started out at the Daily Gamecock, Gamecock Central, all things Carolina sports and media. He's been there and done it and seen it and covered it. Spent some time in our home state of Kentucky as well. He hosts Bleav in South Carolina, so he's on the Bleav network like we are, talking about none other than Rixon Lane. Rixon, man, appreciate you taking the time to hop on here and talk Cats and Gamecocks tonight, man. How you doing?
Doing great. Happy to be diving into this new permanent rivalry. Now that the SEC has arranged this marriage for the next 4 years. Excited to jump into it.
Absolutely. Did it? Some of it was kind of getting leaked out yesterday, and the speculation has been going for a while. Did South Carolina get the 3 permanent rivals that they thought, or they throw y'all a curveball? What's everybody thinking down there?
I think Kentucky was kind of the curveball. I was on with the Missouri guys last week, and we were kind of talking about how that rivalry has kind of become a banger here with some of the games they've played recently. And they asked, who were the 3 that would make the most sense for South Carolina? And I said, if you're looking at it from a historical standpoint, the 3 teams the SEC Carolina probably wants to beat the most and cares about beating the most on a year-to-year basis is probably Georgia, Tennessee, and then a toss-up between Florida and Missouri. And obviously, they got 2 of those. But I mean, you're right. I mean, the Kentucky series, it's so weird historically to be saying the words the Kentucky series, like, because I mean Carolina at one point had won 16 out of 20 in this series, and a lot of this came in the late 90s when Carolina was dreadful, and some of them came in the early 2000s when Carolina was just maddeningly mediocre. So for this thing to kind of swung Kentucky's way for as long as it did, and now has swung back Carolina's way, if you had gone back and told 6 and 7-year-old me that Kentucky's going to be a crucial game in your schedule in about 20 years, I don't think I would have believed you. But here we are.
Yeah, I mean, I think I wrote about that when I was talking about Kentucky's opponents. Obviously the Tennessee series is lopsided for Kentucky's side, but that's obviously, the rivalry, the fans, whether or not it's lopsided or not on the field, Tennessee, Kentucky fans, they go back and forth. Florida was obviously a rivalry. There was that 31-year skid, kind of got back and forth. But kind of like you said, it's kind of odd from the conference's perspective. If you just want to say we're prioritizing rivalry, that's fine. But you say we're focusing on historical rivalries, and then you put Kentucky, South Carolina, and it's just not one, right? Like when we talk about the rivalry there, I would say it's fair to say there is a rivalry now, and a lot of that comes from Shane Beamer, Mark Stoops, these last couple, last 10 years maybe of playing football. But when you look at the history, I went through the entire matchup history. There's just not a whole lot there, and it doesn't really feel like a lot of the games they played that, neither team was happy to lose or always wanted to win, but it didn't really feel like those games meant as much to either school for a very long time. So interesting to me from a historical rivalry perspective, but interesting to see where that goes going forward. And I also would have said that if I was predicting South Carolina, I would have said Georgia. I would have probably said Florida. And why am I blanking on the other one? The other obvious one.
Tennessee.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, the Kentucky, for a long time, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, it's just the way it was. A lot of times, it was kind of a Spider-Man meme. Those two teams looking at each other and go, hey, we're probably going to win 2 conference games. We got Vandy and we got you. And that was – those games meant a lot from that standpoint, because if you don't win that one, there ain't a whole lot left. There's not a whole lot of meat on the bone for the rest of the SEC schedule. But, and some of those – I mean, honestly, some of those games were really good. I mean, there's a game in the early 2000s where Carolina has a unknown quarterback named Mike Rath go down and throw a game-winning touchdown, and we never hear from Mike Rath again. It was his one shining moment. And there were games that meant a lot. In 2007 when Carolina turned out not to be very good, but at the time I think they were ranked number 9 or 10 in the country, and Andre Woodson's doing his thing in Lexington, and they come to Columbia, and it's a big deal. It's an ESPN game, so. They played some good games, but yeah, you're right. You look at it and go, historically, who do you really care about beating? I mean, I don't see it, but yeah, it's gotten a little feisty here in the last couple of years.
Yeah,
you said, oh, my bad.
Sorry about that. I was gonna say, you said number 9 turned out to not be that good. Is that a little bit of deja vu this year?
You said it, not me. Yeah, I mean, it is. Well, the difference was that team didn't fall apart till like the 7th or 8th game of the year. This team let us know a lot earlier that maybe we were a little off on the preseason prognostications.
Yeah, we were speculating about what type of Carolina, Kentucky would be facing when they go to Columbia. Stoops is bad off bye weeks, but we talked about it's going to be Cutter Boley's first start. Will Carolina be coming off of a 2-game losing streak? After what Vanderbilt did, and in Williams-Brice, and then going to Como, and that's what ends up happening. We're getting a 2-game losing streak. South Carolina that they need to get right. We need to prove what happened last year is in the rearview mirror. So it's like I said, it's a critical game for both sides.
Yeah, it is, and I think you're getting a Carolina team that reminds me a little bit, not to the same extent, but when we were going through the season at the beginning of the year, I kept telling everybody, the Virginia Tech game is crucial because that's a desperate team. That's a team that has to have something go right for them. And honestly, guys, Carolina's not that different right now. Obviously, there's a lot more stability around the program, but look, everybody was penciling in Carolina going to LSU at 5-0, at 4-1 at worst. And now you could go there 2-3 if you don't take care of business on Saturday night. And I think that for South Carolina, and we talked about this on our show before the season started, and I hit on it again the other day. I mean, look at the back half of their schedule. How many wins can you find? Because I see one for sure, and that's Coastal Carolina. The rest of them, LSU, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Clemson, and Alabama. That's the back half of their SEC schedule. You tell me after 4 weeks which of those teams are going to go and beat. Now they could.
If Mateer is out, if he's still out, that helps you.
I mean, yeah. I mean, potentially. Okay, cool. Then you're 5-7. I mean, that the reality is that's not what we were told this team was going to be. And I said at the beginning of the year this team could be really good and they could go 6-6. Well, 4 games into the year. I ain't seen really good yet, and you're 2-2. So I think I said this last week, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I mean I think you're at a real crossroads for this season because This thing is already skidding. If you lose Saturday, buddy, we're in a ditch, and there's no one coming to tow us out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like you touched on it earlier, Kentucky and South Carolina kind of being the Spider-Man meme there again. It's almost like the same thing all over again, because Kentucky fans at the start of the season are saying, hey, if you're a Kentucky fan, you're saying, hey, we could be really good and still go like 5-7 because you look at the SEC this year. And then you talk about that. South Carolina, I feel like kind of finds itself in the exact same position Kentucky was last year, where you're looking at, we got to get this one right, because if we let this be a snowball, there's just not a lot of winnable games as we keep going, and it's going to keep getting worse and worse and worse. And then even some of those games that are more winnable, by the time you've already lost so many in a row or you're so beaten down, what was a winnable game now isn't anymore. And Kentucky didn't have the added weight South Carolina did of bringing back Lenora Sellers and getting a preseason number 10 ranking, which certainly didn't help their case. But it's just been a weird season for the Gamecocks. I felt like, going into the year, there was people thinking Virginia Tech could be pretty solid. You got a hard-fought victory there, and it looks like a good win at the time. Beamer got the Gatorade bath. Obviously, that's a really personal game to him with the Beamer ball legacy of Virginia Tech. But now we look up and Virginia Tech's fallen off a cliff. They fired their head coach. I think their only wins over an FCS team. So really bad season for them. You face South Carolina State, and that game had some weather issues, and you get the win, but just not as convincing as you want to look against a South Carolina State, and then just get punched in the mouth by Vanderbilt. That kind of felt like Kentucky's South Carolina game last year, where you have no answers and just getting absolutely beaten down. Lenora Sellers got taken out. It felt like South Carolina was really limited in what they were able to do. And then you have a tough one where you really put up a fight in Missouri, but Missouri does such a good job of limiting the ground game there, really is able to get the better of, on defense against South Carolina. Now you're 2-2, a bunch of games where you feel like, maybe we didn't play very good, but we didn't necessarily play as bad as the record shows or how bad the box score looks. But here we are, and we're staring on the barrel of having a losing season.
Clemson is in bad shape too. You said one more win with Coastal Carolina, but Dabo and them is skidding towards the ditch too.
And do you know how irritating it is to watch Clemson, who's been good since when I was in college, and that was a long time ago. That was 2013, 2012. Do you know how irritating it is as someone who's grown up in this state, who's lived in this state for 31 of my 33 years on planet Earth, for Clemson to finally be bad? After years of having to watch them win national titles and go to playoffs, and they play in the ACC, and they don't even have to put their shoulder pads on for half the year, and they're finally bad, and I can't even enjoy it because my team looks like that. Like, I'm a South Carolina fan. I've been a Carolina fan. I've been following that team since '94. I can forgive a lot of things. Goodness knows I've forgiven a lot of things watching that team. But so help me God, if they do not let me laugh at Dabo Swinney, I may never forgive them. Because I've been able to laugh at Dabo Swinney in a decade. And he's finally letting me do it. And it's not even funny because my team can't get their act together.
Yeah. Is this returning to the average, the mean, the median, I think to the mean? Because last year was so good, maybe kind of came out of the blue. Maybe y'all expected to see what you saw. Maybe it was ahead of schedule, and then you have this year, and it's kind of averaging things out. Is that what we're saying?
Well, historically, South Carolina can't stand prosperity, so that it would make sense. I think there's a couple things that are playing into this. One, last year you had a really veteran team that I think people are forgetting because – the year before they went 5-7. So no one thought that the guys you had on that team coming back were that capable of things. You had an unknown commodity at quarterback who people forget halfway through the year, Lenora Sellers didn't look that good. Like, he was fine. He looked like a redshirt freshman who couldn't stop fumbling, and he looked real game manager-y through half the year. And then he put on the Superman cape for the back half of the season. But even then, he wasn't shredding people through the air. I mean, he threw for 350 against Missouri, but the rest of the games, his highlights are so high that people forgot what the rest of the games looked like. I'm not saying he was bad, but he didn't look like that every play. And he definitely didn't look like that at the beginning of the year. So he turns into that halfway through the year, and you had a bunch of older veteran guys, and Shane Beamer talked about it in his press conference today. You had grown men on that team last year. You had Nicky Manwari and Demetrius Knight and Debo and Boogie Huntley and Tonka Hemingway. I mean, you had some grown dudes in that locker room. They don't have that anymore. So you've got talent. You've got very ballyhooed recruits that have come in. You got guys like Dylan Stewart, who's a cyborg, but he's a sophomore in college. Sellers is a redshirt sophomore. Nick Harbor is a junior who just now committed fully to football. He's been running track his whole life. You've got all these really talented freshman wide receivers. They're freshmen. Like, you don't have the kind of leadership that you had last year. And that's why I don't think that this team can make the kind of run that they did last year, because what you saw in the first half of last season was a team that had a ton of potential, was playing really competitive football. After the Old Dominion game, they looked really good for most of the first half of that year. They just couldn't get over the hump. Like you saw in the Kentucky game, kind of, the ceiling on this team could be pretty high when they put it all together. I know Kentucky wasn't very good, it turned out, but you saw what it could look like. This team this year is so frustrating because they're competitive in spite of themselves. Like, they are so talented on paper, and they do so many things that are antithetical to winning football, and yet they're competitive in all these games. I mean, the Missouri game, guys, they had the fewest rushing yards they've had in 44 years. They committed 14 penalties, and they led the dang game going in the fourth quarter. Like, that's not supposed to happen. But that's the thing about this team this year that is so frustrating, because all the talent is there, and you just look out and you go, well, at some point, surely they'll run out of toes to shoot off, but they don't. They keep finding them. And like I said, the thing that's so frustrating to me is at no point in this season did I anticipate going, that doesn't look like a well-coached team. And they don't look like a well-coached team right now. And that is scary, because I don't know if that gets fixed.
And see, that was leading to my other question, because, you hear X's and O's, Jimmys and Joes. You got talent. You just mentioned that the talent is in spite of, they're winning games in spite of themselves, being competitive in spite of themselves. So if Dow Loggins is still there, not Mike Shula, do you rush for more than -9 on Saturday? Is that where the issue is with trying to get him in sync with the talent that's there? I was listening to your episode. I didn't get all the way through it, but this team is what we thought it would be. Basically, you're saying it's Denny Green. Yeah, who we thought they were. So is it a matter of the OC change, or what is all the layers to what's happening?
I feel like, to a certain extent, and this is not unique to Carolina fans, but the offensive coordinator is always the boogeyman when things don't look right. And, South Carolina, last year the offense didn't look good for large chunks of the season. Dow Loggins was an idiot, and they wanted him out of town. Well, then he goes out of town, and Mike Shula's here. Now Mike Shula's an idiot, doesn't know how to call plays. And, Marcus Satterfield, the conspiracy theories around Marcus Satterfield that his headset wasn't even working when they played Tennessee and scored 63 points. Like, I don't know what the play calling operation looks like. What I do know is that you have a quarterback who's 6'4", 250 pounds, and runs like a deer. And in his last 5 games, I think he's averaging less than a yard per carry. Something's wrong. Like, that shouldn't be physically possible, the way he looks and the way he plays. And if you go back and watch that Missouri game, he doesn't run the same. He doesn't run the same that he did last year. And it's entirely possible that he's just making some business decisions, and I don't blame him. I'd probably make them too. I might not try to run through every linebacker that got in my way if I was a top 5 pick in the draft projected to be. Or someone maybe has told him, hey man, we need you to change a little bit. We need you to be a little different. And if that's the case, I mean, I guess I get it, but what makes him a unicorn is the way he can run and what he brings with his legs and his mobility. And if you neuter that, then you're taking away a really dynamic part of that run game. And, oh, by the way, you got an offensive line that has not blocked the run well at all. So if you're not letting Lenore Sellers run and you can't run block that well, that could lead to a night where you run for -9 yards.
Yeah, I mean, like you said there with I don't really know what it is with Sellers. I mean, he's still a very talented quarterback, but if someone, if someone did kind of tell him you need to change that, it's kind of I don't remember who told me this. There's an old saying. It's like taking a star and turning it into a light bulb. Like, I don't need a light bulb. I can go buy a light bulb. We have a star. Why not let it be a star? And, obviously he's capable of passing the ball. He's capable of, Mark Stoops said that on Monday. He's capable of, if you give him time to sit back there, he will make good passes and he'll tear you up. But it is his mobility that makes him such a threat, because you have to try to defend that pass and also keep him contained, keep him from running. And it's really hard for defense to do that. On defense, you really can't do it all. So I don't really know where the issue is there with Sellers, but it is frustrating. I mean, obviously I'm neutral to the matter. I don't follow South Carolina the way you do, but it is frustrating to see a guy who came into the season expected to continue being a unicorn. Obviously, like you said, he didn't look great all the time last year, but came into this season with another year, had so much potential, probably a top 5 pick, and is just not playing the way you expect him to play this season. And in spite of that, it's like there's times he's one of the only things the offense has going for it sometimes, but regardless, he's still had plenty of flaws as well this year. And wherever that's coming from, that's something South Carolina is really going to have to get fixed. It's only going to get tougher.
Yeah. I don't think he's not quite where he needs to be as a passer yet, but my gosh, like if you turn on the tape of him, like the Missouri game last year and this year, watch some of the throws. Man, I get why NFL scouts go, my heavens, like look what we could do with this dude. Like he's got the arm talent. It's not always, he misses some balls that he probably shouldn't miss. But again, he's started now 15 games in his career, 16 games. Like he hasn't played that much ball at the SEC level, and he'll get better if he sticks around for another year. But the arm talent's there, man. He came into a season this year where you don't have a Rocket Sanders, who's a really good running back they lost last year. You've got Russell Faison coming in from Utah State, and Oscar Attaway is a good back, but they're not quite the same dynamic that Sanders was. And Sanders is also a veteran running back who's been in the SEC for a long time at Arkansas. You had guys like that. You had a bunch of older wide receivers, and Campbell and Larvidan and a bunch of dudes who have been around, played a lot of games, who weren't like really highly touted, but they developed a really good rapport with him. And this year he's throwing to basically, it was before the Missouri game, it was Nick Harbor and the Harborettes because no one else was getting targets. Now you saw Vandravius Jacobs become a weapon, and when he had a great game. You see Brian Rowe starting to emerge as one of those freshman receivers. So I feel like the passing game is getting there. He's improving. But like you, man, like the idea of, if you want to put him in the pocket and let him throw, I mean, that's fine. But, I mean, that's not how I would utilize him. And, no one's asking me how I would run the offense, but I might let him get out in the open space and make people account for him, because as a pocket passer, like you said, I mean, it's not that he can't do it, but holy cow, he can do a lot of other stuff too.
And you mentioned, the throws he can make in the Missouri game, where you all were clearly one-dimensional, all night, and he was still, throwing some dimes and dropping it in and making some throws when there was no reason to respect the running game. Have you guys got to talk to him maybe after practice of media availability? His demeanor changed. He's still the same dude. Is it, is he frustrated, or is he still, I'm gonna get through it, just a little slump, or what's his?
Yeah, I mean the stuff I've seen from him. I mean, if he's frustrated, he's not showing it.
Yeah.
And Lenoris is not. And Shane Beamer hit on this today. Like Lenoris is not a real vocal guy. That's just not who he is. He's not in that mold of Spencer Rattler where he's real animated and going to get in people's faces and light into people and stuff like that. That's not really who he is. He's a different type of leader. I mean, obviously the players voted him a captain as a redshirt sophomore. So obviously they think highly of him in that locker room, but he's not a super vocal dude. He's not ever really been a guy who comes out and rips into things and expresses frustration about stuff. And and most of these quarterbacks have that beaten out of them as they go through high school anyway. So you very rarely get quarterbacks that will speak their mind on stuff. So I don't sense any frustration from him. And Carolina as a program has been very consistent in their messaging about the play calls haven't changed from last year. They're not changed. They haven't had some drastic shift in how they run Lenoris. They haven't altered what they're doing with him, which it's not that I think they're lying, but the film says something's different. So, but you haven't heard anything from them, mentioning any sort of frustration with him or anything like that. I think that, again, it's frustrating with this team that you can see the possibilities. I mean, we can see what he's capable of. You can see what this team can be capable of because you've got on this team, guys, 3 of the freakiest athletes in college football in Sellers and Harbor and Stewart. Like, they got dudes. They're just the dudes aren't making plays. And the big thing for Carolina, I think that's the thing that has jumped out to me the most, and it really got put on display in the Missouri game, is Carolina. And I took time today to look this up. Carolina has committed in their first 4 games of the season, they've committed 23 pre and post snap penalties through 4 games. No one else in the league is really close to that. I think the second highest number was 17. They're averaging almost 6 a game, which no one in the conference is over 4, I think. So, and Kentucky, by the way, 3 all year, pre and post snap. Now, in between the whistles, that stuff I think is stuff that coaches can live with because that's guys trying to make plays. The false starts, delayed games, unsportsmanlike, illegal shifts, all that stuff, that's where I go back to, is this a well-coached team? Because well-coached teams don't do that, and they are doing it consistently. They're the only team in the league that's had 4 of them in every game they've played this year. And, again, I don't – if you're 4 games into the year, I tend to believe you have a good idea of who you are as a team. If that's who they are as a team, it's going to be even harder to win games than it already was when you're costing yourself yardage constantly throughout the game, which is what they've been doing.
We've been there.
Yeah, you talk about the pre- and post-snap penalties. Obviously, Kentucky's been a lot better about that this year. It probably doesn't feel like that to certain Kentucky fans because one of those 3 you mentioned kind of like almost was responsible for the Ole Miss loss in some ways. It took back a really big play that would have been important there. But yeah, I mean, it's rough to kind of see that. And that's the kind of stuff you look at a team and you're like, this is not the kind of issues a team should be having, especially, early on things happen, but through 4 games, that many penalties, it's a problem. But I wanted to pivot a little bit away from what South Carolina struggled with. And like Kentucky, there's a lot of that. But something South Carolina is really, really good at. We talked with Jay Boulware today, who is UK's running backs coach, but more importantly, special teams coordinator. In South Carolina, obviously, Shane Beamer, former special teams guy. Really good at special teams, really good at punt return in particular. And we saw a lot out of Kentucky's offense against Eastern Michigan. It's Eastern Michigan. But broadly this season, punting is not something Kentucky is, shall we say, unfamiliar with. And South Carolina is very good at returning punts. They're even good at kind of getting back there and pressuring, maybe even blocking a punt. But how important is the game going to be? I feel like specialty, you always hear offense, defense, and those are obviously very important. But from this game's perspective, how important is the special team side of it going to be?
Well, it's huge. I mean, when your offense hasn't scored more than 2 touchdowns in a game in their last 5 games, you got to get points somewhere else. And fortunately for Carolina, their defense has a scoop and score this year. And Bakari Swain, 2 weeks into the season, he tied the school record for punt returns in the season for touchdowns. He's got 3 through 4. He's in an unfathomable streak of 2 straight games without a punt return. He's ice cold. They should probably bench him. But Carolina has had a lot of success with that. I mean, they were this close to blocking a punt in that Missouri game when it was still a 6-point deficit in the fourth quarter. Would have given them the ball around the Missouri 30-yard line, and who knows how things play out if they get that instead of having to start back on their own end of the field. So, yeah, I mean, that Shane Beamer's team lethal on special teams. That, you've always got to be aware of the tomfoolery that they can pull on extra points and things of that nature. They are. It feels so weird to say, but you've lost one of your biggest weapons in the special teams department in Kai Kroger, who's maybe the most accurate throwing punter in the history of college football. I have to go back and look at his numbers, but he wound up being something like 6 of 8 through the air for like 5 touchdowns in his career. He's not around anymore, so you lost a guy that they really deployed constantly in the special teams game on fake punts and extra points and all that stuff. But Carolina put in wrinkles with that. They have not pulled anything out so far this year, but I think part of that is because they replaced the entire field goal kicking operation from last season. So you break it in a bunch of new dudes. So they may be hesitant to pull things on that. But, yeah, I mean, Carolina's going to come after punts. They're going to set up for returns. Swain has been dynamic for them. Even in the Missouri game, he had some openings that could turn into things. So, yeah, if Carolina is going to help get themselves out of this skid, you gotta make plays in all 3 phases. And fortunately for the Gamecocks, that's something that they've had a lot of success with, not only this year but in Shane Beamer's tenure, and that they're going to need it to continue.
Yeah, you got to imagine if you're Kentucky, you've got a kicker that you're advertising as having a 50-yard range, but Boulware said today it goes longer than that even. You're probably not going to march him out there for something much longer than 50, but he's capable of it, allegedly, depending on the weather. So you got to imagine if you're Kentucky, the goal has got to be maybe we let our kicker test some of his range a little bit instead of punting it to a guy like Swain, who's shown all year. Obviously, like you said, hasn't had a return touchdown these last 2 games. Got to get rid of him at that point. But who's shown he's very lethal at what he does, and a unit, especially like you said, for a team that's maybe struggled offensively, that has really put its team on top in many ways this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the punt return won the Virginia Tech game in my mind. I mean, that put them out of range of getting back in that game. And in the South Carolina State game, and Carolina played with his food for almost the whole first half, and then Vakari Swain returned 2 punts for touchdowns. And you look up and go, oh, they won by 28 or whatever it was, but that was a pretty close game there for a while. Not that you thought they were going to lose it, but that's kind of what Carolina has used special teams as. They've used it to sort of break the dam and help put teams away. And Kentucky, I think, is one of those teams where if you've got something in your sleeve, this would be a good week to break it out, because I went back and listened to when we did our preseason preview, and Kentucky, I said Kentucky, I feel like it's kind of like this is a kind of submit yourself game for South Carolina, because of the way, like we talked about, the way this series has gone, how Kentucky had momentum in the series for what felt like forever, and now it's come back towards Carolina. You've won 3 in a row. You got a chance to win your 4th in a row. This is kind of a restore the natural order game, I think, if you're South Carolina, because look, they got problems. There's no denying they got problems, but at least you can say, but this isn't one of them. We've got this is taken care of. Now we got to deal with all the other stuff. Kentucky is kind of like the demon possessed doll in the haunted house. Like, you can't kill it, but Carolina could at least put it in a box and say, okay, we'll deal with you later. We've got other stuff to deal with right now. We're going to put you in here. We'll put a padlock on you, and we'll worry about you later because we got other stuff to do right now.
I get it. So, you've been following this team your whole life, born and raised in South Carolina, went to school there. You know your team just like as most fans do. So if you're objective, some always think with their heart, some think with their head. What did you think was going to happen last week? If you just took your emotions out of it, did you, maybe you thought at the start of the season, oh yeah, we're going to come on and get a W. But the way the season has unfolded, were you going into last Saturday like, yeah, I don't know if we can, coming off the Vanderbilt loss, going to Como, where were you at going into that game?
Yeah, I mean, I know your listeners probably aren't listening to a bunch of our stuff, but I'm not super, I'm not real fancy in how I talk about this team. I mean, it's I try not to look at things through garnet colored glasses. And I said coming into the year, I said, you go to Missouri, that's a team that you never blow out. Carolina never goes in and just dominates Missouri. I don't think they've beaten them by multiple scores in like 7 years. So that's not how that series ever goes. Como's a hard place to play for Carolina. And I thought even going into the game into the year with all the expectations on Carolina, I thought that's a game they could lose. Missouri always plays them hard. And then going into last week, I picked them to lose 27-21, and they lost 29-20. And I told the Missouri guys, Carolina, I think it's a game they can win, but I've seen no evidence that they will go in and win that game because I've seen what they've looked like through the first 3 weeks, and they're not consistent enough to go in and win that game. And they weren't consistent enough to go win that game. Shane Beamer talked today about, they have their little keys to victory chart like everybody's got. I'm sure Mark Stoops has one, but things that they say, if we do this, and this, we win the game. And they talk about explosive plays. They talk about stopping the run. They talk about running the ball effectively. They talk about winning the fourth quarter. They talk about winning the turnover battle. And they did none of that except win the turnover battle. And when they don't do anything but one of them, they don't win games. Shane said that. He said when they do half of those things, they win nearly every single game. When they don't, they lose almost every time. And that's what happened. So, again, I think that going into that game, I thought Carolina would play tough. I thought the one thing I did not anticipate in that game was how badly South Carolina would tackle. I thought that was a issue in Vanderbilt that would get corrected, and it got exacerbated. They've missed 16 tackles in that game. And I know Ahmad Hardy is a monster, but it was really bad. It was really bad. And that was the thing that surprised me the most was – and I say that the defense didn't tackle, and they didn't. And you look up at the end of the game and go, they've held them in the red zone to field goals twice. They've kept them in the game. Like, again, the frustrating part about Carolina, they tackled awfully. And you look up at the end of the game and go, and yet you were right there. And yet you made enough plays in the game to be in the game. And it wasn't quite enough. And that was kind of what I thought would happen with Carolina. I just didn't know how it would happen.
I'm kind of like you. I'm not, blue color glass. I try to be objective. The best I could do for Kentucky, Cole would tell you before the start of the season, other radio shows I've been on, best I could do was 5-7. And I had Ole Miss as the one that we steal. And, that's our, the one that you get to surprise everybody, just kind of, and they, let that one get away. South Carolina was one I thought they wouldn't get. They're all tough. It's not as tough now as it seemed like a few weeks ago, but I'm still, it's Cutter Bowley's first start in the SEC on the road. Ole Miss just came to Lexington and won, and Austin Simmons' first SEC start on the road, but he was shaky. He threw 2 picks, and he was, he was wobbling, and what you do on the road in the SEC. So as excited as everybody is about Cutter, and he's a Kentucky kid, and you want him to do well, look, it's sandstorm, it's Columbia, it's at night. You can't have experience until you get experience. So, if Kentucky can ground and pound and muck it up and ball control and run it and just, a steady dose of Seth McGowan, that will help. Some kind of special team, some kind of scoop and score, some kind of mistake. But it's critical for both. It's just so wild. Like you said, it's been the Spider-Man meme for years. You talked about how dreadful y'all were for years when you beat us. It's not a word, but we were always finding ways to be dreadfuler than y'all. That's just the truth of the matter. The game where we won when Spur was the coach. Y'all were up 28-10, and you had Lattimore and all those dudes. So we – and then, Cobb got hot and Hartline and all that. But, Steve Spurrier, they got a good punter up there because that's the only good thing he can say about us. That's where we've lived for the bulk of my life. I'm older than both of y'all, but we all know the history of our teams. I used to say in the 90s, Hal Mumme was at Kentucky, he had the air raid offense, Tim Couch, all that. Woody Woodenhofer was the coach of Vanderbilt. They had a great defense, and they couldn't score points. I said, if you merge Kentucky and Vanderbilt in the 90s, you'd have a competent SEC squad. That's where we lived for years, man.
Yeah, and going back to what you said about this game coming up, man, I think that for Kentucky, that the recipe to win is what you just said: pound the ball, keep Carolina off the field. That's what Vanderbilt did to them That's what Missouri did. Carolina, I think, coming in today is 128th in the country in time of possession. Their offense is just never on the field. That might be, that doesn't explain all their problems, but it does explain some of them. They don't get on the field enough to score. That's kind of what happened to them in the Vanderbilt game. So, and again, I mean, if Kentucky doesn't come into that game trying to at least prove that South Carolina can stop the run, they're insane. Because that's exactly what Vanderbilt did to them. That's exactly what Missouri did to them. And those two guys didn't have redshirt freshmen making their first road starts. And I will say that. I mean, you coming into a night game in Columbia as an 18-year-old who's never gone on the road in the SEC. I know he started the Louisville last game, but I believe that was it in Lexington. To go on the road in the SEC at night to Columbia is really, really hard. And Carolina's down this year, but I don't expect that place will be empty. That place will be full. It's a sellout game. Carolina students will be in a frenzy, and I don't think you go into that game expecting to ask him to throw the ball 40 times, because I think that'll get you beat.
Yeah, I mean, I would say on the point about Cutter for sure. This is obviously going to be a much bigger challenge for him than anything he's had to do so far. This is his first real true start as Kentucky's guy at South Carolina in the night game. I think he has the benefit that, his first ever game in a Kentucky uniform, he got fed to the Wolves in the swamp, had to play at Florida. He had to play at Texas last year. So he has some experience on the road. Obviously, don't look at the box scores for those because neither went very well for him. But, it's something Bush Hamdan, Kentucky's offensive coordinator, talked about today. He was asked kind of about what Missouri did, kind of controlling time of possession. He said, the quote I have here is, Missouri did a lot of really good things. I think in this league, we know every possession is critical. He said, I don't think you're getting up to the 70s, 80s, 90s, talking about amounts of plays. Even with you're playing tempo teams, every possession is going to be important, playing clean football, eliminating negatives. And then also he talked about the run game and the importance of the run game. I think Cutter Boley, how he plays, is going to be important. But like you guys have kind of touched on, I think the run game is the biggest aspect. He said, it's quote, I think you have to run the football to win. That's going to be extremely important. You have to control the clock. It'll provide long drives. You got to keep your defense off the field as much as you possibly can, get them some rest. He said, I think you're seeing that conference wide. It's important. So whether it's Cutter, it's a young guy making his first real road start, or it's a fourth-year guy, he said, you got to be able to run the rock. And ultimately going into this game against South Carolina, that's going to be really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and he's right. The play number isn't necessarily the thing that he's right. You're not going to expect to go in a game and we're going to run 80 plays in this game. But what you do is you don't let them get the ball. And that's exactly Vanderbilt and South Carolina ran the same number of plays in that game. They both ran 63 offensive snaps. Vanderbilt had the ball 11 minutes more. Missouri had the ball 11 minutes more than South Carolina. If you get Carolina where their defense is on the field for 35 minutes, and you only let them run. Carolina ran 50 snaps in the Missouri game. 50. Missouri ran 75, which isn't a huge number until you consider that the opponent ran 50. Yeah. He's exactly right. Carolina's kryptonite, or one of them this year, has been they don't defend third down very well. They've not been able to get people off the field. So you stay on the field, you run the ball, you kill the clock. You don't let the unicorn and Sellers get on the field. And then when he does, it's okay, well, you got to go score every drive. And Carolina hasn't done that. So, yeah, I mean, I fully expect Kentucky to try to, copy and paste what they've seen the last 2 weeks against that Gamecock defense and go prove you can stop it, because you haven't proven it yet.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's hard to win football games if you can't score. And it's even harder to score when you don't have much time to score. And the thing about good defense is you can be one of the best defenses in the country, but you're out there play after play after play. You're going to get tired and you're going to make mistakes. You can't defend everything and you can't keep going forever. Football is a long game. And, you got these corners that are running, they're trying to cover routes. You got these guys who are hitting and guys who are in the trenches. You're going to get worn down. And I think South Carolina's kind of seen that where, they've got a solid defense, but they're out there so much. The offense can't seem to stay on the field, can't seem to stop the other team from, can't get the other team off the field. You're just wearing down. And then you start seeing mistakes that maybe they wouldn't otherwise make. You start seeing plays get made that shouldn't be able to be made, or that they would have defended had they been, a little bit less fatigued.
So got a little Florida situation, sounds like. Just a little bit. Similarities.
A little bit.
So tell everybody about Bleav In South Carolina. When do you record, and what do listeners get when they tune in?
Yeah, so I try to put one out every Monday and Thursday. That's been the schedule I've been trying to keep. It shifts a little bit with, depending on what after school activities my kids are into. So that's kind of changed up a little bit. But yeah, we try to do twice a week. Do a recap of the previous game. We do a preview of the game upcoming. So we'll have our Kentucky preview out hopefully on Thursday. And yeah, I mean, I'm a numbers dork, so I like to look into the stats and stuff and figure out kind of the numbers behind where Carolina is successful, where they're struggling. So we do a lot of that, and a lot of it is like I said, it's not overly an emotional look at things, but we're trying to take the pulse, take the pulse of where the program is. And this week I was as critical of them as I think I've been since we started the show, because the vibes are not very good right now around that program. And so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. It feels like, listening to their media availability, that guys still feel that this team is right on the cusp of being what people thought they would be. And Shane Beamer is always optimistic when he talks to the media, and I'll be interested to see what they come out and do in this game, because like y'all said, this one means a little more. This one has meant a little more ever since Stupid Sunglasses and Dancing. This one's meant a little more. So we'll see what it looks like.
So do you host it solo, or you got a co-host too, or?
It's just me. It's just me.
We have two co-hosts here with
I see that. I see that. He's a real chatterbox too. You can't get him to the hush.
Absolutely. He's a gamer. Lights come on, and that's the spot right there. Pops right up there.
That's right. Practice is important, but sometimes the playmakers make plays when the lights are brightest, don't they?
Absolutely. What's the fan base saying, as a whole? Because up here, Stoops has been here a while, and it's run its course, and is he gone? And he went to Texas A&M a few years ago. The flirtation there. He's the longest tenured coach, winningest coach, but there's a whole lot of dynamics here. But where's everybody at down there with Shane Beamer?
Oh, normal college football fans, just very calm and level-headed and rational about everything. You know how they are. No, I think it depends on who you're talking to. I think the majority of the fan base is frustrated with what this team looks like, because this is the first time in like 11 years that people have expected things from South Carolina, like nationally expected things. And this is what happened 11 years ago when people expected things nationally from South Carolina. They face-planted early in the year. So I think there's some frustration around that, and also a sense of you're missing a window for this college football playoff because of who you've got at quarterback and some of the dudes you've got on that team, and the window's about to close when those guys aren't around anymore, especially being in the SEC. So I think there's some frustration and irritation at that. I've said that I think that Shane Beamer's the right guy. I think he's the guy for that program. I think he's a unique fit for that program, and that this is not a stepping stone job for him, which is all Carolina has ever had in head coaches, was guys who either just wanted to be back in college in Holtz and Spurrier, or wanted to take that job because no one else would hire them, like Will Muschamp, or guys that Carolina wasn't their dream job. It was just the big job that they got, like Sparky Woods and Joe Morrison, and you can keep going back and back. Shane Beamer is a native. He's been on that staff. He has seen that program at its best. He helped get that program at its best as the recruiting coordinator. So I think he is a guy who long-term, if he is able to fend off the wolves when things are bad, he can be a long-term guy there. I think he could have sustained success and stay. Man, at South Carolina, win 7 or 8 games a year and compete and go to nice bowl games. They'll let you stay as long as you want. Like, they don't run people off. They don't. Unless the wheels fall off, they're not going to fire you. And I think he's capable of keeping the program at that level. And the other thing, too, is like, They never start well under him. This is the fourth time in 5 years they're 2-2 after 4 games. Like, this is not unique. It's only unique because we expected more of them. That's the only thing that's changed. So I think that the temperature in Columbia is a little warm right now based on what he's been dealing with in his tenure. I don't think that anybody's looking at it and go, you can't run that dude off and then try to bring – and no, like, who's going to want that job? Like, that guy who had you a sliver away from the playoff last year, you can't run him off after that this quickly. And I don't think anyone rational wants that, and it's obviously not going to happen. But again, there's frustration that this team, that we all were told how good they could be. We saw what they did last year, and you thought pieces were in place. It hurts to see them. You feel like squandering an opportunity that Carolina has never had. They haven't been this close to a postseason since the heyday in Spurrier. That was 15 years ago. And to see them be that close on the doorstep this season, and it's done. They're not going to the playoff. Like, it's over after 4 weeks. That's frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, you want another parallel actually there between these two programs that are getting ready to face off this Saturday. I remember back in 2022, Kentucky football got ranked in the preseason number. I Bleav it got ranked, I think 22, 23, something like that. But it was the first time in 44 years Kentucky had got a preseason ranking. I was a student journalist at the time for the Kentucky Kernel, and I wrote a story that basically said, kind of like what you talked about with South Carolina there. I said this season is do or die because it doesn't really matter if you live up to the expectations. You had fans saying 11-1 college football playoffs back when it was still 4 teams, whatever. But at the end of the day, you got the national media to believe in you for the first time in a long time. And if you whiff it, they're not going to be as graceful again. And Kentucky went 7-5 that year, and they haven't even sniffed a preseason ranking again, And I think that point for Kentucky, that 7-5 season, when people were talking about 11-1, they got that preseason ranking. They went 7-5 again the next year, and fans were a lot less happy with it. And then it kind of felt like that's when things, if things have been going up with those 10-win seasons, it felt like that 7-5 year in 2022 is where things started going down. And we saw that last year with them being 4-8. Now people are talking about getting rid of Mark Stoops, but it kind of goes back to that same idea of what you just talked about with South Carolina, where they got that recognition. They finally got the national media to believe, hey, maybe this team could be something, and then immediately squandered it as soon as they got it. And that has to be one of the, I know it has been for Kentucky fans, but that's one of the most frustrating feelings, is feeling like you're finally back on that stage and then face planting off of it before you can really do your performance.
When they got to number 10 after the Vatech game, we did an episode, and I think we titled it "The Era of Expectations," and we basically said almost word for what you just said. Now, like that, for the first time in 15 years, basically, the college football world has said you're one of the cool kids now. Like you are in this upper tier of teams, and it's not the getting there that's the hard part; it's the staying there. And for goodness sake, they couldn't stay there 2 weeks. Like, that's the most frustrating part, is you've seen them climb and climb and climb and climb and climb and climb, and they get there, and immediately you're like, nope, you're not one of them. You're not LSU. You're not Georgia. You're not Texas. You're not only are you not them historically as a program, just in this 14-day window, you were them, and nope, you're not. Go back down where you were. And that's this frustrating part, is that's been this program's story forever. And you just thought this year, you thought you could ride it out at least a month, like get to the LSU game, and they couldn't even do that. It's so frustrating because, like we said, you saw all the work they did last year to get it, all the groundwork they laid, even when Rattler was here, like winning big games, beating Tennessee, beating Clemson on the road. It's so freaking hard to get to that point, and you've got nothing to show for it after 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Well, it's not rock bottom until it's Lou Holtz 0-11 rock bottom. So there's always that. We've said on the show, I keep trying to tell people, like, the idea that there's a built-in floor at South Carolina, you're wrong. There's not.
Kenny Dillingham said before the year for Arizona State, when they had a terrible practice, he said, there's going to be 3-9 teams. Why couldn't it be us? It could be you.
Yeah.
It could be, doesn't matter that you went 9-4 last year. You could go 3-9 this year. If you lose that Kentucky game on Saturday, like I said, show me a win on the back half of that schedule that's not Coastal, who, by the way, looks more competent than they have at any point this year. It could happen to you.
Yeah.
That's that's the reality Kentucky faced last year. Nobody thought 4-8 was going to happen last year. Life comes at you fast. The South Carolina game had people down, but then the losses just started to pile up. And then every game was like, maybe that's not as winnable as I thought it was. They need to get this one. And then you look up and you're 4-8 at the end of the year and you're like, what happened?
Ask in Tallahassee. Can it always get worse? It can always get worse.
Yeah, for sure. Man, Rixon, we can't wish you good luck for this game, but hope after Saturday, hope you navigate the schedule as best you can, and cool hearing your stories about your time in Kentucky and our time in South Carolina. And everybody go listen to Bleav in South Carolina on the Bleav Network. We definitely appreciate it. Go give 5 stars and rate just like you do for us. We all appreciate everybody doing that to help everybody find everybody's shows and get listeners and all that good stuff. So maybe get you back on for basketball season or something like that. Do a little crossover then as well, man. We'd love to have you back, man. Appreciate you taking the time and chopping it with us this evening.
Anytime, guys. Really appreciate the invite. Had a blast.
So for Rixon Lane, Cole Park, my name is Vinny Hardy, and another episode of Bleav in Kentucky. Everybody stay safe, stay sane, go Cats. See everybody Saturday. We'll see what happens down there in Columbia Saturday night. Talk to y'all next time. Everybody be good.